What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Black House Podcast, Episode 2. We're here again with Black Politech.
What's good?
KDot. And your boy, as always, TJakks World. We got a couple of things going on and a couple of things that we want to talk about. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the horrendous George Floyd holiday cards. Now, for those of you that do not know, and it's fortunate that you didn't know before, but now you know, so you can be mad with us. In California, the LAPD, infamous as they are, decided to circulate a George Floyd holiday card. You're right. A holiday card that read, "You take my breath away." I think we can imagine what's wrong with that. Black Politech, please. Take it away.
So I mean that's pretty much what it was. Some LAPD officers basically got caught circulating the holiday card. And obviously, for those that it wasn't already obvious for, it's literally mocking the public execution basically of George Floyd by officers last year. Last year. Literally one of the biggest sparks for all the following protests that ensued and occurred afterwards in 2020. Honestly, it's just, literally this is exactly why us activists organized, why we still out here.
And what organizations are you with, Black Politech?
What's wrong? Shit. I mean, well, I'm with BLM Syracuse, and a few other things, People's Agenda for Policing and stuff like that. Contemplating joining another organization, but we'll see what time I actually have for it. But yeah, so it's just honestly it's just a reminder, and honestly, I think for me, the way I would see it is like, for all the people that honestly are just confusing themselves into being like, oh, well, we still like, it's still about the training somehow, and it's still about, we just need to reform the system, and all this other dumb stuff. It's like you can't train somebody to not mock the murder of someone else because they don't care about Black lives. Like you can't train that away. I'm not gonna persuade them to not feel like that in a panel. There's not like a dialogue that needs to happen. They need to be removed. And then the structures that enable individuals like them need to be removed, which is why we say defund the police and invest in alternatives. Go ahead.
And to be, factually accurate, we will be referring to George Floyd's situation as a murder. That's how it was ruled by the coroner in this case. On some news outlets, such as Fox News, they have said that George Floyd's was ruled as an accidental death caused by an overdose of drugs in the system. So that is not what the coroner who examined the George Floyd's body said. He said it was a homicide. So that is why we will be referring to it as a murder on this show. The other thing I wanted to address is when it comes to the training, you're right, Black Politech, it goes even further than just, defunding and restructuring these organizations. We have to understand, where does policing come from? Policing comes from a history of racism. We did not have a formal police organizations or unions in this country until after the Civil War. Why is that? After the Civil War, that is when policing, the criminal justice system as we know it, the incarceration system as we know it, the bail system, and so on started to be created. Why were these things created? If you read the 13th Amendment, it says that no one shall be a slave unless you are arrested and you are put in prison for committing some type of felony. If you commit a felony, you are no longer exempt from being a slave, essentially. So the 13th Amendment has an addendum to it that says you're not a slave unless you go to prison, right? So, and then in the wake of the Civil War, Now that you can only be a slave if you're in prison, you see the rise of laws that criminalize things that Black people would be doing. So Black people wouldn't have jobs. You saw the increase in vagrancy laws, being out late, loitering, things like that. You saw that Black people were criminalized more harshly for doing drugs that everyone did. All you would have to do was put them in front of a jury that would only convict them and not convict people of other races, such as white people, mostly white people. And as we saw, the actual incarceration system then becomes a system of oppression used to get free labor out of people whom you can no longer enslave. This transformed into the modern day incarceration system that we see today. And we still see remnants of this, right? People who work in prison for, cents, 20 cents an hour, 30 cents an hour. And what happens to the things that they work on? The people who own those prisons, private prisons, sell those things and make money. They make money off of the slave labor of the inmates. It is not illegal because these inmates are legally allowed to be slaves because you are not permitted, non-permittedly, or rather you are a slave if you are in prison. It's not illegal for them to use you however they see fit because you are no longer human until you leave prison again. So understand our criminal justice system, our incarceration system, no matter what, very smart and intelligent people I know out here are doing research on why people commit crimes, broken windows theories, social bond theory, and so on. However, we need to understand that the criminal justice system that exists currently is a system that is not meant to rehabilitate you, nor is it meant to punish you for the crimes you've done. It is neither of those things. It will not rehabilitate you and it will not punish you. It is for the people who own those prisons, who now own your labor, to make money off of. That is the prison system, a capitalist system. In this case, not even fully capitalist because they capitalize on, or rather, they socialize, in this case, the losses. So you pay for the prison, right? You pay for the cell, you pay for the food, you pay for the clothes. And they privatize the gains, right? They get the money from selling the goods that these people make. So it's not even really a capitalist system. It is just a monetary system. That is what our criminal justice system is. So in order to make a system that is fair on both the policing side and the incarceration side, it would require an entire overhaul, not just defunding the police, not just a restructuring, although those are good steps forward. It would require an entire overhaul of the system due to its racist nature.
Facts.
Yeah, I agree.
Facts. And honestly, even like some recent examples of forced slave labor, of like all the massive fires that we had last year in California, they were using prisoners to fight those fires, and they just like they did in 2018, where it was like they were paying them like $1.45 a day. Let me go back to it. It was $1.45 a day to fight those wildfires. Mind you, they're not giving them health insurance. And so if they got cancer, any type of lung damage, anything like that, they was not paying for it. So yeah. And then apparently this past year they were like, oh, it's hard. It's not as easy to get prisoners to fight the fires because of COVID, and they're getting COVID, so we don't have as much manpower. And it's like you couldn't have been forcing them to fight fires. Anyway. Yeah. So
I would say that it is punitive.
What did you say?
I would say that prison is punitive. The prisoners get punished.
I would agree that they get punished, but I would disagree that that's the purpose of our prison system, because not all prisoners are punished equally for their crimes. So, for example, you could be a rapist, right? Let's say you have, raped a girl behind a dumpster, like Brock Turner.
Mm-hmm.
He was sentenced to 7 months, and he got out in a couple of months on good behavior, right? So the system itself isn't punitive. It chooses whom it's punitive to.
Right.
Yeah. That's a fact. And also, I mean, again, if the intent is to prevent crime, punitive measures are one of the least effective ways at preventing bad behavior. I mean, literally, there's plenty of studies with kids that shows like, oh, if you spank a child, it's pretty much 50% effective. Or if you think, oh, the 3 strikes is gonna suddenly stop people from committing crime, it's not.
Right.
Although the 3 strikes laws was not meant to stop people from committing crimes, it was specifically meant to stop Black people from committing drug-related offenses.
Right, right. But I say as to say, like, the common misconception is that, oh, it's because it's supposed to stop crime.
Right.
Right.
And almost nothing that has been enacted is actually supposed to stop crime.
Literally, almost nothing. But yeah.
What we see. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and last thing probably I'll add is like, LAPD recently talked about they're doing some defunding thing, because I think they like passed it last year that the budget for this year would be like 160 billion, not billion, 160 million shorter or something like that. I haven't looked into the details yet, but
yeah, I've seen some of the details of that. So they did take, I might be wrong on the number of that, but I think it's either 25 million or 30 million, something like that. And they're going to take that money from the police and put it towards educational programs that are targeted at underserved neighborhoods and underserved students.
Yeah.
That was the information that I read about. Now, I don't know whose job it is to allocate that money, and I don't know how we can be sure that they've allocated it properly, but that is what is being said is going to be done with the money. I think it's around 25 or 30 million, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, their Black Lives Matter chapter did an amazing job.
Yeah, I'm sure they're gonna stay on their necks about that, because it's definitely one of them things. As soon as you lay off their necks, they every opportunity to get they messing it up. So yeah,
very good. So rolling right along, we have so much going on in Texas right now. But let's start with the Texas mayor. He resigns, and while he resigns, he says a lot of, you can't really call them hurtful or heinous things. He just said what was on his mind, who he is, right, which is a particularly loathsome person. And in this case, this Texas mayor, as he resigned, said, people who can't get through this, once in a decade storm, they call it once in a century, it's once in a decade at this point, storm, are just weak. And the real Texans, will be able to get through. The strong will make it, the weak will not. In a sense, basically, if you can't make it through this, you're on your own. Sure, I'm your, government representative, and I'm supposed to take care of you. But in his letter, he said specifically, the government has no obligation to take care of you, even though that is literally the opposite thing of what the government is supposed to do.
Yeah.
So in this case, too, and I'll give you both sides on this one. So as far as we know, he was still mayor when he wrote this derogatory, note or post. In this case, in Black Politech, we'll talk a little bit more about the substance of the post. But as far as we're concerned, he was still mayor when he wrote it. Internally, allegedly, from his side, he had already put in his resignation to be mayor, and he was a private citizen at the time that he wrote the post. Although that does not make it better, because you still had the exact same views when you were mayor as when you became a private citizen a couple of days later.
So let's go into like what he literally said. So the dude said, if you have no water, you deal without and think outside the box to survive and supply water to your family. If you are sitting at home in the cold because you have no power and you are sitting there waiting for someone to come rescue you because you are lazy, is direct result of your raising. And then the last thing he said was, only the strong will survive and the weak will perish. Yeah, this is a freaking elected official who was elected to handle the needs of his electorate. And this is how he chose to communicate with his electorate.
Yeah.
With his
So let me ask you guys this after hearing that, right? Do his actions speak more to the type of person he is, or does it reflect the views of the people who elected him?
This shows his character, brother. Like, this shows how incompetent this man was to begin with. Like, I know,
But they voted for him.
Yeah,
right, but
that's exactly what I was gonna get on.
okay, but when you vote, you're not thinking of a snowstorm.
No, you're not. But
this guy clearly made it abundantly clear. Even if it wasn't a snowstorm, if it was some other type of emergency, he would not help you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, then it goes hand in hand. They voted for somebody that in this character is shitty. Like, this shows incompetency at its finest, bro. Like, for you to just go ahead and adopt some Darwinism, some Darwinism when shit hits the fan is terrible. And nah, it's just a no for me, bro. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think this is a perfect example of why I won't live in a red state. Because it's stupid on all sides. Stupid people electing stupid officials, and this is what they get. It's like this. It's not the first sign that this mayor was like this. Clearly, I mean, he resigned. Like, I'm sure there were other examples. I'm sure on his campaign trail, he probably ran on some racist junk, and y'all was with it. I'm pretty sure. I'm like, it ain't that hard to read between the lines to see.
And just to clarify, when you're saying this is what they get, you mean this is what happens when you vote for someone like this versus you deserve this.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Just want to clarify that for any listeners who might be like, Black politics.
I mean, this man literally said, like, no one owes you or your family anything, nor is it the local government's responsibility to support you during trying times like this. Sink. I think he meant sink or swim. It's your choice.
Yeah. And this just shows like that conservative mindset that's like, and we see this in Congress too. I feel like this anti-socialist mindset where we're not supposed to help the people that elected us in office.
But let's be clear about this though. It isn't anti-socialist. It's anti-assistance for the people that need it. The people that you're talking about are all for socialism when it helps the rich, right? Tax breaks for the wealthy is socialism.
Right,
yeah.
Good point.
Right? The $6 trillion injected into the stakeholders of the stock market last year, right? And the stock market, 80% of the stocks are owned by 10% of Americans. Okay. That's socialism.
Yeah.
They didn't pass a law for that one. They just said, "Oh, you guys need money? Here you go."
Yeah.
For us, we need a reason. We need means testing, and we need to know that we're not gonna just sit on our asses afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have socialism in this country. It is for the rich and the wealthy. And we have rugged individualism. Martin Luther King Jr. said we have rugged individualism for everyone else.
Literally. And the craziest thing is that, like, the people who have no access to that wealth will then a lot of them will still be like indoctrinated in well, if I was potentially to get that, if once I potentially get to that stage of income, I don't want these extra taxes. It's like the likelihood is that you and 99% of the people will not achieve that. So your whole life, while you justifying your lack of assistance on the premise of someday I'll be in a position where giving people assistance takes from me, so I don't want anybody to get assistance. I'm like, that's just so backward. That's so backward.
Now let's bring back my term from our last episode. Main character syndrome. It does not just affect COVID-19 conspiracy theories. Main character syndrome means that I am pushing the plot forward. And if I ain't doing it and getting done, when people see those statistics about, most small businesses fail within the first 5 years. The ones that last after 5 years fail within the next 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. When people look at those statistics and when they see, only 0.01% of Americans ever reach, multi-million, tens of millions of dollars. When they see those statistics, they go, oh, well, that's not me. I'm not part of those statistics. Those statistics don't include me, not people like me. Because there's nobody like me, right? I'm completely and utterly unique because I'm the main character. No one's like me. So when we talk about these statistics and like, well, statistically, you'll never make it. Well, I'm not a statistic. That statistic doesn't apply to me. Right? The main character syndrome is pervasive in our society. You're the person pushing the plot forward, and nothing applies to you because you're the main character. And when you do something, things happen. And if you don't observe it, it don't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, and that's why, like, when I talk about this stuff, I'm definitely not like I'm definitely not don't paint things as if it's like, oh, black people do X or like poor people do X. I'm like, people do people stuff. Yeah. And that's just what it is. People do people things regardless of whatever identifier or label they might fall under. People do people stuff. So
exactly. And on the Texas train, in this case, we also have TJakks, aka CanCruz, took a trip to Cancun. And, he was caught in the act. He said he was going to, he was on his way down there. He said, I'm dropping my daughters off because they wanted to get out of the cold and go to Cancun. And I was heading right back. I was on the next flight back. I was coming right back. So, and then text messages, don't even know how they got these, but text messages from his wife show that they had been planning this. They had been planning to stay through Sunday. So he was not on his way back. But, I mean, I wanted to say something, then I'll open it up to you guys. The man's first response when they said, so what are you doing? You're going to Cancun? He goes, oh, my daughters wanted to get out of the cold and go to Cancun, so I was going to drop them off and I was going to come right back. His first instinct when caught with his hand in the cookie jar is to blame his daughters?
Yeah, I mean, so I think we got to remember, we're talking about TJakks, the man whose wife Trump publicly called ugly and all this other stuff. Yet still, TJakks was riding him and supporting him as being his walking stick his whole entire presidency. So I'm like, if TJakks ain't even gonna stand behind his wife, what make you think he's gonna stand behind his constituents? Come on now.
But he didn't. He abandoned them.
Exactly. So I'm like, I don't know why people was like, oh, TJakks is like da 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 da. I'm like, yeah, he gonna lie. Of course he was gonna lie. Of course he was taking a trip. Of course.
But to lie and go, no, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's my daughter's fault. If they didn't want to leave and go to Cancun, I would have never done nothing.
If he didn't care about what Trump was saying about his wife, he ain't worried about his daughter. He ain't worried about it.
No, you're right.
Of course, he threw his daughter on the bus.
And it's funny how when they caught him, with his hand in the cookie jar in this case, he had a mask on to go to Cancun. You know why? Because they require you to have a mask in Mexico. You know where he doesn't wear a mask? America.
Right.
Yeah, he's trying to lay low or something.
Right. TJakks, that was on the whole, we need to build a wall to keep the Mexicans out. Going to Mexico in a time of emergency to escape.
Build the wall. Build the wall. Hey, bro, can I come over for a little bit? It's a little cold over here.
Right. They said,
I got to wear a mask? Well, I said it was a hoax, but I mean, I'll put it on if you say so.
And not just cold. Like, his whole state is going through fucking blizzard. Like, their vision, what they think is a blizzard to them. Like, they've never experienced snow, and people are dying. Like, I read a story of someone that left their home and like never returned home because they died on their way to work or something. I'm like, what the hell?
Families that tried to keep warm in their garages by sitting in their cars with the car on and died from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah.
Like, what type of pathetic shit is that to leave? Like, there's a time and place for everything. I know everyone wants to like get, like, my mother Like my family is trying to like travel all the time now. Well, like not all the time, but like they're trying to get out of their house. They're trying to go and do something that's fun. I know people going through stuff, but you don't just leave the fucking country, leave your whole state when they going through something that's pretty much unprecedented for a lot of them. Like traumatic experiences. People lost power during the fucking winter storm. You don't have no damn fight.
You know who didn't leave? You know who was there delivering aid and raising money for Texans? AOC. AOC was doing more for the state of Texas than Ted Cruz.
And Texas don't even rock with her like that.
Not at all.
Texans don't even rock with her like that, and she still was holding it down for him.
By the way, we were talking about
along with Beto O'Rourke, to be fair.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about his children. His children have to quarantine for 10 days, and that means, weirdly enough, they can't even attend online school.
That's
that's something that's a policy for the school. You can't even learn online if you got COVID.
I mean, I guess I get it in terms of like they don't want it to be like, oh, you have absences because this is time you could have came but didn't, so we like just say you can't come. But I think it's stupid to be like you can't come. I think it's the better would just be like you can or you cannot. This is how you feel.
Right, and apparently like the other parents are like, nah, they better not be on it.
What? Yeah, that's weird. I'm like, first it's like we don't want to wear the mask because the kids got, and then we can't quarantine because the kids got to be in school, and then they could do a remote now. But if they are in quarantine, then they better not get on that remote. What? What is these? Yo, I don't know what's going on. I don't know.
Like, I talk to people from Texas. They don't even want to talk about this shit right now. They don't even
I got a friend in Texas, and she said she just got her power back yesterday, and so she was staying with friends for like 2 days. Well, the first day she just stayed in her house cold with no power, and then the second and third day she stayed with friends, and then she just got her power back yesterday.
Crazy. Hypothermia is real, bro. Like that, you die.
Yeah. The crazy part that we also didn't mention is that like they increased the cost of the electricity. Now.
Oh yes, wait. Is that
capitalism?
All right, I'm just making sure. All right, yeah, bet. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's get into it. So
yeah,
Tejas. I'm gonna give y'all a little lesson. I learned this week. I ain't know all this, and now I don't like Texas even more. Tejas, in the wake of the Civil War, right between that time and the New Deal with Roosevelt, they once energy starting being set up, Tejas said, eventually we might just secede by ourselves. And we can't secede if our electric grid is connected to everyone else's.
Dang.
So we'll make our own. So there's the West Coast electric grid, which extends as far as the edge of Nebraska, if I'm not mistaken. And then from Nebraska onwards to the East Coast is the East Coast electric grid. Okay? And then there is the Texas electric grid, its own electric grid. Now, stark differences between the West Coast, East Coast, and Texas electric grid. The Texas electric grid is completely, hear what I say, completely private. There are no government entities that provide electricity to people in Texas. It's only private corporations.
I think that's how these is, I think.
Those private corporations are unregulated in Texas. Now, are they unregulated because the Texas government just decided that they don't need regulations? Of course not. It goes deeper than that, people. The reason these private energy organizations, and understand what this means when they're unregulated. For example, they don't have backup generators. None of them. have backup generators. I think there are a few individual cities where they've decided to add regulations, but the majority of them have no backup generators. So when it goes out, it's gone.
Mm.
The other issue is that majority of them do not have insulation on their pipes. Insulation is what prevents your pipes when it gets really cold and really hot from bursting.
Yeah, that's a big problem in Syracuse.
So the pipes are not insulated, okay? And there's no regulation except in a few cities. I think Austin might be one of them. And I think that's one of the places that didn't lose power as well, or they got it back very quickly. I may be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure there are a couple of cities, and Austin might be one of them. Anyway, the reason these people are not required to put insulation in their pipes or have backup generators, or let's rewind. Why wouldn't you want backup generators as an electric company? Well, because backup generators are only going to work when something happens. And if nothing happens, you're paying extra, what, Politech?
Money.
Exactly.
Money.
You're paying extra money for something you're not using yet. And if you insulate your pipes, well, you have to insulate every single pipe. That's a lot of money. The miles and miles of pipe work you got going on that transport your gas, to insulate all of those costs a lot of money. And what happens if you don't insulate them? Well, only if a storm hits and then they burst. If a cold storm hits and they burst, otherwise you're fine. And so they have no financial incentive, at least, to insulate the pipes and to have backup generators. Now, who are the people who would put these regulations on them? The governors. Now, who has contributed the most money to the governors in Texas? Oh, that's right, the power companies. The power companies have contributed the most money to the governors in Texas. It is not a coincidence that the governors then have no regulations for any of the power companies to follow. Not only that, but the Texas Power Company, or they also allow Texas power companies to have variable rates for the electricity, which means that when it's not in use or less electricity is being used, your electricity will cost less. And when more electricity is being used, your electricity will cost more. And in those cases, I guess if it's, not being used much and you're paying a little bit less for electricity, it's good. But in Texas, there's almost never going to be a time where the electricity is not in high demand. So almost all the time, the rates are going to be very high. So it's actually not helping any Texans to have a variable rate. But what it does mean is that when a disaster hits like the one that hit now, you can increase the rates as high as you want. And people have no choice but to pay what you increased it to, or else they freeze and die.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah, I wonder how those I want to say like Texan nationalists are trying to secede a few months ago or last month. I wonder how they feel now.
Honestly, I'm sure whatever it is, it's the wrong way.
And now they got federal aid coming to them.
I'm like, I swear, they're probably blaming AOC right now. I've literally heard them talking about they blaming the Green New Deal.
Yeah, they blame the Green New Deal. They said it was on Fox News. They said the reason Texas doesn't have power is because of the windmills.
Damn.
Yeah.
The windmills, I think, provide 7%, maybe 12% of power to Texas. Yeah, some of the windmills are frozen.
Oh, wow.
You know why the windmills are frozen? Because they didn't have to put any de-icing on them. You know why they didn't have to put de-icing on them? Because it's not regulated. They're not required to.
They weren't prepared.
But the freezing of 7% or 12% is what the windmills provide in terms of electricity to Texas. Majority of it's gas that isn't working. So it's not even the windmills. But they say it's AOC's fault. It's the Green New Deal's fault. If you want to have renewable energy as your primary energy source, then you're going to have blackouts all the time.
Yeah.
Shit situation.
They will find anything to blame, man. Except for themselves.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it can be helped. Like I'm really, because I've definitely heard conversations about like, oh, how do we deprogram people, and all this other stuff post Trump and all this and all of that. And I'm like, I don't even know if we are really post Trump yet. But honestly, I don't even. I just feel like it's so difficult.
Here's the thing.
You literally like, hold on, let me just finish. Like, you're literally like dealing with people who say they don't trust anything and then decide to trust only one thing, but while still saying that you can't trust anything. So they choose not to trust anything outside of what they already trust, which is something that is woefully inaccurate and not even like unapologetic in how inaccurate it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then if even the people who did say like, oh yeah, we done with Fox News, I'm going to Breitbart now. Another woefully inaccurate, racist, slanted news outlet, right? And it's like, if I can't reach you with truth, and if I lie, you say all we do is lie, how can you be reached? Right? Like do I wrap it up and do I like do a message, wrap it up in racism so you think we on the same page, and then like inch you over to other things? Do I? I'm really like. I mean, I really don't know. I really don't.
I think the thing that's, and maybe this is a more somber note, but you can't unify, you can't teach people, and you cannot change the minds of people who do not want to unify with you, who do not want to be taught, and who do not care for their minds to be changed. You simply, there's nothing you can do with those people except defeat them, in this case politically, when it comes to the things that help everyone in the country. You can't, I'm honestly totally 100% against the, all right, guys, now you got to reach out to your Trump supporter friends, your Republican. First of all, I am a Trump supporter friends, so it's talking about white people. You got to reach out to your Trump supporter friends and your Trump supporter family members, and you got to console them right now and bring them in. Well, here's the thing: you can't bring nobody in that doesn't want to be brought in. I'm all for. If somebody says, "Hey, I was a Trump supporter, but I realized I was wrong, and now I want to do the right thing," I am all for that. Come on over, buddy. But I have no desire to force you to believe in science. I have no desire to force you to believe in science. I have no desire to force you to believe in things that are factually true. I have no desire to force you to believe that you are being manipulated. I have no desire to force you into unifying with me, because at the end of the day, you can't force anyone to do any of those things. You cannot force somebody to work with you. You can't force somebody to learn something. You can't force somebody to change their mind on something that they are not, and they've told you they're not changing their minds on. Think about yourself. How many things have you someone forced you to do that you did, that wasn't someone who had some type of power over you, right? Your mom can force you to do something. Your boss can force you to do something. Your neighbor Bob can't force you to do shit. The dude at the grocery store can't force you to do shit. The guy who double parked in the parking lot can't force you to do shit. And you probably will not do shit that he asked you to do. Because he was an asshole for double parking. So it's not a thing where I don't want to unify with people, or I don't want to work with people, or I don't think we should, but I don't think we can. I don't think you can work with people who don't want to work with you. And maybe maybe that's too much of a somber note. And so where does that leave us? So then people might say, well, Talent, so are you just saying that this 74 million people in the country are just lost to this belief? Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's a somber note. It's daunting to think about that there are 74 million plus people who, hate minorities, want the most oppression possible for people who aren't them, who will elect people just based on their personality, not based on whether or not they can do the actual jobs. It's upsetting and daunting to believe that is majority of our country. But we also have to hold the possibility that that's majority of our country. Now, I don't know one way or the other because I can't know that. That's not something that any individual can know without doing some sort of mass study or whatever. But I can say it's a possibility. And right now, all the people shouting unity and working together do not believe that it is a possibility that all of these people want to be your enemy, that all of these people want you to fail, that all of these people want you to step out of the way so that they can make shit worse. That's not even a possibility. It's not even on people's radar. They're saying the only thing that can be done is that we bring these people over. And that may not be possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I'm thinking about it, and like me personally, I don't care to unify. Like I think it's a stupid call to action. I don't think it's feasible or reasonable. And even me going down a thought experiments, like even if you decided that you genuinely were like, yeah, like we gotta bring them over, we gotta bring them back from beyond the pale, it's like, how would you go about doing that? Like what innovative way would you go about doing that? Because telling them the facts is not gonna work. So what's it called? What was it? So yeah, I don't think that's valid. But I'm really trying to figure out though, like for the politicians that do say that that's their objective, is it a blatant lie? Like we're gonna get $2,000 checks immediately first week kind of thing? Or isn't a lie in order to like give a reasoning for delays in actual implementation of policies? Or is it because they just stupid and actually believe that is the path forward? It's one of the two. So I'm like, which one is it? Or is it both?
This is where, yeah, I think this is where I come. I think this is where, not where I disagree with you guys, but where I believe in the unity. I do. I believe that there are power numbers. I believe that.
I do too.
And I believe that unifying can embrace that power, and that, especially in regards to the United States of America, the unity is how we overthrow, multiple things that we claim that we want to fight every day, such as capitalism. Good.
So I mean, what do you mean specifically by that? Because I would say, like, even when we look back at like the largest instances of like social change, it was not in a state of unity. I can't mention one, whether it be like abolishing regular slavery, not like incarceral slavery, but mostly about whether it was that, whether it was like desegregation, like whether it was like women getting the right to vote, whether it was black people getting the right to vote, whether it was the civil rights movement, like none of those scenarios can I say that was when we was unified.
Right. And yeah, it's fucked up. And I think in that context, like the government, well, not even the government, like the elite are responsible for that separation. We look back to America, like before slavery even happened, or before all blacks were enslaved, they were indentured servants. And white people were also indentured servants, right?
Yeah.
And they shared some type of empathy in the struggle. Even though blacks suffered more, white people still suffered. And there was an event called Bacon's Rebellion that occurred. And this was essentially, because they understood how classist America was, or not, this is pre-America, how classist their society was. And, the black people understood, at least the slaves understood how racist it was. And at that point, in Bacon's Rebellion, they're trying to come together to defeat the elitists. But right after that, it was a failed attempt. And right after that, well, not right after, but around that time afterwards, that's when, they were really big on pushing slavery so that blacks could not, kind of assemble with whites from the lower class and try to fight the elitists. And so that's an example of America fucking shit up right there in terms of being unified against the elite. And another is right before Jim Crow, when blacks and whites were both, they were both, this is post-slavery. They're both struggling, they're both suffering, and they want to come together and possibly, there was another party. I don't know if you guys heard, the Populist Party, and their whole philosophy was coming together and destroying the elite. This is separate from Democrats and Republicans, or whatever they were called back then. And how are you gonna, how are you gonna build that party up when you have Jim Crow and they can't even, this is way before technology era, where if you can't be face to face, there is no organizing or anything.
Yeah.
So that's another example of how, they in that instance, they give white people the upper edge. They give white people a reason to hate black people.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you in that. I do think that part of the reason that, like, the class that the Trump supporters in this case, right, those people, that group of people, have been told, you're at least better than the immigrants and the blacks.
They've been manipulated, bro.
So work with us to oppress not only you but them too, because you're at least better than them because you're white. That definitely does exist, and that definitely has been the way that they prevent the lower class whites from working with other oppressed minorities. Because the reality is, lower class whites are oppressed too, not as oppressed as African Americans or other minorities, but they are oppressed, and they refuse to acknowledge their own oppression because they still think they live in a class above minorities and African Americans, right? So that, I do believe, is 100% true. I think where the issues come up is, how can we reconcile with people whom have already done so much damage? You can say that, okay, they've manipulated these white people and to do things. Well, what have they manipulated them to do? They manipulated them to rape black people. They manipulated them to join the police in certain police departments and arrest and jail and beat and kill black people, right? They've manipulated them to beat little boys, right, and destroy their faces and toss them in the boat engines, right?
And pepper spray black 9-year-old girls,
right?
In the car because they're crying.
So it gets to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. You've been brainwashed, but you've done a lot of things that we can't just forgive tomorrow because you want to fight the elites. And even then, you don't want to fight the elites to really beat them. You just want to fight the elites to get a little bit more for yourself. And if the elites go, hey, actually, lower class whites, we'll give you a little bit more, but as long as you fight with us against the blacks, then you'll turn right back on us.
Exactly.
You'll turn right back on us in a heartbeat. So I think we've gotten to the point where I can't unify with a white supremacist. It's not possible. You hate my existence, and if you don't hate my existence, you've already acted in a way that has subverted my existence, beat, killed, raped, or approved of the beatings, killings, and rapings of my people. I can't unify with you. I simply cannot. Yes, there's a sentiment, if you do something, this good versus evil notion, right? If you do something, does that make you a bad person? I think that's too simple-minded. What did you do? People try to make it seem like bad things are always bad things and good things are always good things. No, there's severity. If you call somebody the N-word once or twice, I can unify with you at some point. That's not that I can overcome that. We can overcome that. You learn whatever, you call somebody N-word a couple times, that's something different. That's a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
That's different from raping a black girl because you knew that no one would take her seriously and you wouldn't get arrested. That's totally different. That's not the same thing. That's different from beating a black woman because you're the police officer and who the fuck is going to arrest you? That's not something that we can't unify after that because you've used your power to not only oppress, but physically, mentally, and emotionally scar a person of my persuasion for the rest of their life. You don't just apologize to somebody you raped. You don't just apologize to the family whose child you killed. That don't make it better. That don't fix it. And they're under no obligation. Don't get me wrong. There are some people like in the Botham John case where the police officer shot them in the apartment. There are some people that are going to forgive you for killing their loved one because of your racism and hatred. There are some people that are going to forgive you for raping them because of their love, because of their racism and hatred. I know there's a whole group of rape victims who were raped and then got pregnant afterwards, and who are like, proud of their child and who don't hate their rapists, right? There are people like that. Those people exist, right? Yeah. But I don't think as a whole, as a community, we can come together and unify with people that have been systematically, physically, emotionally, mentally, and psychologically, and financially, and legislatively been trying to and succeeding at making our lives as terrible as possible.
And I will say, like, in the examples you gave, they said sorry. We talking about people who. No, I'm talking about in examples TJak gave. They said that was them saying sorry. We're talking about people who are not only are they not saying sorry, they saying I will do it again, and I know God is with me in doing it. So we're not even at the let me just decide if I'm gonna accept your apology.
So then we gotta say, have these people figured out what they're doing is wrong? Right? We got to get there first. Right. If they don't believe what they're doing is wrong, and then that's where I'm getting to my conjecture in this case, right? I do think people can change. I do think people can unite with us. I don't think the way you are today is the way you have to be tomorrow. However, the question is, when do you change? If you change 10 years from now and I die within the next 10 years because of who you are, I can't afford to wait for that change. Yeah. That change is entirely too long. What did James Baldwin say? He said, you asked for time. It took my father's time. It took my mother's time, my sisters and my brother's time, my nieces and my nephew's time, my cousin's time, my uncle's time. How much time do you want for your progress? Because I'm ready to move forward. This is me talking. I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready for progress. You're not ready for progress. I have to wait until you're ready to accept me as a person and to accept me as a human in order for progress to happen.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And once we get to the question of when are you going to do it, that's where we have issues. If I knew that every Trump supporter was going to stop being a Trump supporter or every white supremacist was going to stop being a white supremacist in 2024, I'd be like, all right, y'all, let's just rock it out. Let's get it done. Let's try not to die until then. We're going to make it happen. But we don't know. They could be that way for the next 20, 30, 40, or 50 years. And maybe they do change, but it might be too late. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm saying that in the unity conversation, that's never brought up as a possibility. And that's never brought up as a reason for us to do as much as we can do now. So that way we can subvert any negativity that comes down the road.
Yeah. Like literally the unity strategy is I'm going to do less now because I want to wait till we agree to do more. Instead of, let me just ignore what you're talking about and do things that will just, even regardless of whether or not you agree, will make your life better, which ultimately will make you in a state that is more receptive to new information because you have more of a luxury to be like, let me change how I'm thinking about things because I ain't worried about eating. I'm not worried about shelter. I'm not worried about where I'm living at. I'm not worried. like I'm not in survival mode no more. So like I have more of a luxury to be like, oh, let me just think about stuff. Which is exactly why when it came to like women's right to vote, it was mostly white women with a whole bunch of extra time on their hands, middle class, didn't have no job, supported by a wealthy man. So yeah, because they had the time. So I think that would be a more practical, efficient, and effective strategy than saying, let me do less. Because because the people who would be helped by me doing more don't agree with it yet. That's not going to work.
True.
And when you do more, you'll help those people too.
Exactly. Whether they realize it or acknowledge it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess with my position on unity, I guess should have clarified. Like I'm not talking about like going out here and recruiting people that don't already follow, like don't already want better for themselves. Like I guess all right, so I think a good example for this would be in the movie that just came out last weekend on HBO, Judas and the Messiah, the Black Panther film, which
Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Are you about to give spoilers or not?
Oh damn.
Because it's still kind of new, ain't it?
I mean, yeah, it is really. I mean, you don't got to spoil none of the like key plot points, but you can talk about themes and stuff like that. That's fine.
Yeah. So I mean, it's based off of just like Judas being the informant, who played a key role in like I'll get into that later. But yeah. So Judas and Black Messiah, Fred Hampton, and so basically, an example of unity in my sense of what it means is, so Black Panthers, like this is kind of, and I learned this today, like some Black nationalist organizations were kind of against what the Black Panthers were fighting for, because they were not just fighting for Black people. They were fighting for all oppressed people.
Yeah.
And in the film, there was a scene where Fred Hampton and some other Panthers were attending a meeting for, not a white nationalist meeting, but essentially poor white people. You know, they were fed up because as TJack was mentioning earlier, you know, poor white people are oppressed too, in similar forms to similar stuff that we go through. So, you know, in Chicago, not only were Black people being killed by the police, but white people were too. Poor white people were too. And so they were in a meeting, and, you know, some of the Panthers weren't on the same page as Fred Hampton. Brother is gifted, bro. His vision was crazy, and he was so young, bro. So young. And, you know, his whole thing was like, we going through the same things. Let's meet eye to eye on this. Let's fight together on this.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm not speaking on like trying to convince people. Like, you gotta already be in that. You gotta, you know, I'm not gonna leave.
Actually, if it's a true story, you're not doing spoilers. Never mind. I just thought about it.
Oh, actually, yeah, that's true.
It's a true story. You're not doing spoilers. You can say whatever you want.
Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, unless it's like something like done for the movie type thing, but yeah.
Right, because, you know, so he assembled basically in Chicago Black people, and the way he like organized the Black community was crazy, bro. Like, we're talking bringing people out of street violence and getting them on his team. That's the type of shit that I call unity, you know, at least for Black people.
Oh yeah, I mean,
as a community. And it's crazy because like the Black Panthers, like from what I watched today about 41st and Central, you know, the LA chapter of Black Panther Party, like they were known as well for like grabbing brothers that were, you know, getting into violence, getting into trouble, you know, becoming victims of the prison system. You know, back then it wasn't as bad as it is now, as far as sentencing is concerned, especially. But, you know, they were able to grow a chapter from people that were growing up in the community and that were really like facing issues every day, like especially in LA, man. LAPD, as we were saying earlier, but they are some fucked up people, like
Facts.
shooting innocent people, bro. Like getting in Chicago as well, getting into shootouts with the Black Panther Party. That shit is crazy. Like y'all really gotta check these films out. They're very insightful. But that's my thing with Unity and Black Panthers. But the fact that they were able to like assemble not just the Black community but other nationality, other races, like the Puerto Rican community, the Latin, the greater Latinx community, the poor white community. It just and their impact was not just limited to the United States. It was worldwide. Like people looked up to the movement, and as y'all know, the FBI just shut it all down. But that's what I look up to as unity. Just like bring people that are already on the, or at least outside of our community, our immediate Black community, combining force with people that are already trying to, get out of the struggle that everybody is going through, at least in the lower class. And
I mean, I think we all yeah. I mean, I think we all in agreement on that. I mean, I think I think when it was juxtapositioned against like the specific conversation about Trump supporters, I think that's different than what you're talking about now.
Yeah, I don't think all poor whites are Trump supporters.
Yeah,
let me phrase it like this. I don't think I can unify with most Trump supporters, but I think I can unify with most poor whites that aren't Trump supporters.
Yeah, I would agree.
People look at Trump, like the whole Trump movement, as another form, not on the magnitude of Jim Crow or slavery, like I was mentioning earlier, but like this is another attempt to sway people. Like, hey, I'm going to represent you guys. Me being Trump, I'm going to represent you guys. I'm going to save you guys, and we don't need them.
I mean, yeah, he was literally, that was literally his thing was like, I'm for y'all. It's the elite people over there. I ain't one of them, and I ain't a Mexican. So it's lit. He was basically like, I'm one of y'all. I ain't one of them, and one of them included everything else that wasn't rich or that wasn't non-white.
So this is another moment in time where we are extremely divided.
Yeah.
Well, wait.
At the cost of fucking elite government.
I personally don't even like the phrase of us being extremely divided. We are not extremely divided. White people are dividing us from them. Let's understand who's doing the division. Black people aren't doing the division. They're dealing with the division.
They never have.
White people are the ones, and the elite are the ones doing the division.
Yeah.
Because I mean, amongst Black people, we're not that divided. Like, we're not that divided. I mean,
I think there's a large diaspora of ideology.
So there is. I agree. But comparably, we're not out here at protests fighting each other, talking about oh, I'm for Trump, you for Biden, and throwing hands about it. That's not that's not us.
Let me
I'm like, at the end of the day, we ain't have no civil war. They did. We was forced to participate, but it was their war. So I'm like, they are. I mean, yeah, obviously, like there's diversity of opinion, status, all that stuff that's like regular with any group of people. But like comparably, we're not that divided. Like even if you look at voting, I'm like we move more in unison than probably any other voting bloc.
True.
Y'all ready?
Sure.
What's up?
Y'all ready? All right. I'm about to throw a monkey wrench in the agenda here. All right. Since we talked about Black people in division.
Yeah.
Who's Black?
Oh God.
I thought we was about to do a light topic. I thought that was gonna be the monkey wrench.
Who's Black? And does it matter?
This is divisive. This is a divisive conversation right here.
In what context?
What you
Because
mean?
In the context that we're talking about,
Black.
wait, in the context that we're talking about, fighting oppression, fighting for our rights, our communities, and things like that. Who's black?
So because obviously like black is a made up concept, and like in terms of history of people is relatively recent and super like even honestly it's even more American than European at this point.
Yeah.
But
Very much.
so I wouldn't even try to create some arbitrary thing when the foundation is already arbitrary. So I wouldn't even do that. I would just say if you identify as black and you experience the world as black, I think it's fine. I mean, I think it's like one-off people who try to be like, who clearly aren't black and try to play this little weird, I want to be black because it's part of my fantasy thing. I think that's a little extra, but like 99.9% of the time you identify as black, then like it is what it is. And as long as it's not harmful or like, or even if actually, let me make it broader. As long as your identification of being black is not harmful to black people, or you trying to manipulate and finesse resources and all this other stuff, I really don't care if you identify as black. Let me say that.
All right,
Yeah,
so
I think,
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say like this is very subjective. Just like
Yeah.
so many things you could go up. Like there's so many different contexts for black. Like skin is black. Do I experience the black experience? Do I just do I experience police brutality, or like there's so many different things that you could say was
like for example, like Michael Jordan is not getting the black experience. he's never going to experience the black experience.
Well, actually, no, I think he's getting somewhat of the black experience because people are calling Tom Brady the GOAT in terms of being like like the GOAT of athletics.
Does he care?
Not saying no. I don't know if he cares, but and I mean honestly, he probably does because athletes are pretty sensitive. But they're saying like no, like MJ isn't the GOAT of athletics. Tom Brady is the GOAT of athletics, even though if you compare them in their respective fields, perhaps they're both the top, but Michael Jordan is definitely pulling away in terms of being the top in his field versus Tom Brady.
Serena pulling away.
And Serena's pulling away.
Yeah, I think it's generational in that aspect because people from the Jordan era, but they will defend Jordan to the last straw. But like their experience of just seeing Jordan play basketball was life changing. And I don't think I can relate to that. Like we have LeBron, but the way they describe Jordan, like incomparable to anybody.
I mean, he also was like, it was earlier in like, basketball in itself was younger, you know what I'm saying? It was earlier. So stuff that stood out really stood out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like we got
Abdul-Jabbar still has the highest number of points in basketball ever scored. And that's because he could use a sky hook, and that was back before people were shooting threes. Before the Steph Currys. Now the Steph Currys around, people don't need to use the sky hook anymore. But back when he was the only person really using the sky hook, and that's when you shoot the ball from above the rim, so that you pretty much can't miss because you're shooting from above the rim. So he scored the most points, and so because I was watching a video about why they don't do the sky hook anymore, and it's because you can just shoot a three and make it still. So like you don't need to do the sky hook.
Is that point?
Yeah. But back on the topic of blackness and the struggle. So I wanted to hear you guys' opinion on this. So what did you think? It was a while ago. There were a lot of posts going around about what was going on in Nigeria, and there were a lot of people also saying, "Oh, y'all want to talk about Black Lives Matter, but you don't want to mention what's going on in Nigeria. This is why I wasn't supporting y'all in the first place."
It's a whole fucking different concept.
First of all, hold on. Go ahead, KDot.
I was just gonna say, like, at least from my perspective,
and I see that it's not just Nigerians. I'm not like single them out, but there have been other people who say that Asian Americans who go, this Asian person was attacked by a black person, and y'all talking, y'all want me to support Black Lives Matter, but y'all aren't talking about this. There's a lot of other people who post things like that or who have comments like that. This is going on, and y'all want me to support Black Lives Matter, but y'all ain't talking about this.
True. I mean, I think there's a difference in some. Not all right. I'm not going to say that. I think that there's one thing to be experiencing like these traumatic incidents in America as a Black person, but it's also another thing to be consciously aware of what's going on outside of America, and that takes some tolerance just to know that there's also some other fucked up, messed up stuff going on outside of, your neighbor, not your neighbor, but America. And yeah,
I mean,
good.
what I would say is, I think if your intention, well, let me say, so if you starting a conversation by y'all, and by y'all, some nebulous group of one identity that you claim you talking to at that time, didn't care about X, so that's why I didn't care about the oppression or anything bad that happened to Y. You wasn't part of no movement to begin with. Because I will tell you right now, there are no organizers out here that's really out, like any like actual organizers or activists in the BLM space that are like, oh, we don't care about what's happening to y'all. And by y'all I mean any other group of people. Like there's literally none that's like, oh, I don't care about anti-Asians racism. I don't care about anti-Nigerian. I don't care about, like, there's literally no organizers and activists that's really on that type of timing. Anybody that actually do be in the streets, do be out here, not actually, let me change, not just in the streets as in people show up to protest. I mean the people that organize the protest. I mean people that show up to the mayoral meetings. I mean people that do sit-ins, strategic organizing or activist actions with the intent to implement some type of progressive change for some group of people. None of them are like, oh, I don't care about what's happening to this other group of people.
Right.
I'm like, that's not the case. And so if you're talking about, oh, well, y'all was posting about this, I'm like, no. The organizers have always acknowledged other people's oppressions.
Right. Yeah. There's always reference made and paid and dues paid.
Exactly. Even at BLM protests, at least all the ones I participated in, like literally it will start by like, before we get into this, we want to acknowledge the indigenous people whose land it's on.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times there don't even be indigenous people there.
To be fair, I don't think I've ever seen indigenous people say anything negative about BLM.
No, but even then, I'm like, it don't even be like, oh, because indigenous people came.
Right, it's just to show respect for that.
Exactly. So I'm like, ain't no way out here, because at the end of the day, again, most of the social benefits and movements we've seen is because of the organizing and activism of Black people, and all these other groups benefited from that same organizing and activism.
Right.
So it's like, don't come with, oh, I don't care about your situation, because I'm like, no, you just don't care.
Yeah.
It ain't no because you didn't see some random people posting about it on social media, because the organizers I know was all acknowledging what happened in SARS, what was happening with SARS in Nigeria.
Right.
The organizers I know are like, we don't care if the officer is Black, we don't care what they look like, we don't care if they in your neighborhood, we like injustice is injustice, and that's it.
Yeah.
So we can be treated with the same energy. So I'm like, I don't know what people you talking about.
Yeah, and I especially feel like especially before us, like if generations before us have like predicated the college experience off of protesting, and especially during the time of the apartheid, like, bruh, the college experience was all like, even at GW, I know y'all seen the rock that has like the Mandela thing.
Rock,
Bruh, Americans, but especially white people, like that was the whole experience, like just being radical. So I think that is kind of, I mean, I feel for them in the sense that they might not be, they feel like there's not enough media surrounding it, or maybe, maybe all of our protests are not about that issue. But we in America, you got to think we're in America too. Like these are things that are happening in our yard.
Exactly, and
We need
again,
attention. Yeah.
exactly, and I would say like it's very much like if I'm not the group experiencing this issue, it's not ideal for me to lead the advocacy on it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and that's literally how we treat it. So like, even though like me, like I'm like, yo, like if it's like I'll show up for Pride. Like I'll show up if it's some like queer trans advocacy initiative.
Right, the Pride Parade
like,
year.
yeah, exactly. Like I'll definitely support, but like me as a cisgender like straight male, like I'm not about to come and be like, yo, I'm organizing a protest around like sexual orientation like sexual liberty. Like I'm not doing that because that's not my place. So like, and again, it's like, don't come to Black BLM organizers like, yo, like why y'all ain't organizing for Asians? Why ain't organizing for like what's happening on the continent? It's like, we not supposed to be the ones leading that. Y'all are. I
think this goes. I think this kind of goes back to what Tyler was saying though. What is Black?
So
because if Black Lives Matter,
no. But that's different. But that's different though, because Black Lives Matter is not just like, oh, Black Lives Matter, and that addresses anything that Black people that occurs specifically around police brutality. Yeah. Specifically.
Yeah, you're right.
Specifically, there are a whole bunch of other initiatives addressing like poverty, addressing gun violence, addressing gang. Like it's so many other things. Black Lives Matter was not supposed to be the catch-all.
True.
So like, I don't know why people treat it as that.
Yeah, specifically police violence.
Like literally, that's why the whole NSARS campaign was NSARS. So I would look at NSARS initiatives, NSARS organizations. I'm not going to look at BLM organizations because I know that is specifically about policing and primarily in the U.S. Now
you'll support your movement.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we'll show up.
You will be there.
Literally, it's like hit us up. We'll show up. We definitely will show up. We'll show up. We'll give you advice. We will assist. Same with any other group or identity. Like we will come. But don't be like, y'all ain't organized for us. Cause who organized for us then?
Well, is that collaborativeness kind of absent now?
What else?
Huh?
Do you think that collaborativeness is kind of absent?
I mean, I think it can be better. I think it happens sometimes. You know, I think it can be better. I think there are times when it was like, you know, really, really, really big. But, you know, people just have to make that. Like, if people feel like there's something they want to advocate for that is like their specific experience, then like all I got to do is say, yo, like, I'm trying to do this, and like ask for help. But like nobody else who
develop a platform to do it.
Exactly. But like nobody who can't identify as like the person going through that circumstance is really going to be like, I am the representative taking charge, figuring out what the demands is, what the call to action is, because that looks stupid.
Well, I don't want to get too far off our agenda because we've been on a little tangent for a little minute.
It's all relevant,
but it's all relevant. I don't dislike the conversation, and we can come back to it if it rears its head again. But DC gun violence is now being recognized by the government of DC as a public health issue. Now, KDot, I know you wanted to spearhead this one, but before you jump in, I would like to say that how in a monkey's tit do you recognize gun violence as a public health issue before you recognize the lack of health care as a public health issue? I, as a DC resident, do not have health care. I don't qualify for Medicaid because I make too much, or Medicare because I make too much, and I can't afford regular health insurance because it's too expensive. I am uninsured. How is my plight not a literal public health issue? Gun violence is a public health issue. That's what I wanted to say. K-Dot, go ahead, take it away, man.
I mean, I'm not, you know, I could go into, I guess, some background on this. So I believe Wednesday, the mayor had a press conference, and pretty much just issued that there's a current public health emergency going on in Washington District of Columbia. Quick side note: did y'all know that? So you know this whole statehood campaign.
Yeah.
Y'all know the new name, right?
No.
What is it? It's like Columbia something.
No, it is Washington Douglas.
Yeah, I did see that.
Commonwealth. Douglas
Commonwealth.
Frederick
Yeah, I saw that.
Douglas.
I saw that.
Named after Frederick Douglass. I think that's amazing. But I don't know too much about the statehood stuff. I should get more.
Never gonna happen. That's what I know about it.
But yeah, so Wednesday she had a press conference and pretty much stated that we're going through a current public health emergency when it comes to gun violence. And I do think it's a little bit overdue. I think that it's arguable if we were in a pandemic, would it have happened? I don't know. But there has definitely been, and we're seeing this across the nation, a surge in gun violence. I was gonna say crime, but I'm kind of against saying crime nowadays. Like I'm reading the new Jim Crow, and I don't even want to say crime anymore because it's just so like the whole concept of crime is racist within itself. But yeah, like gun violence is crazy right now. Like down the street from me, earlier I was talking about the what is that? Oh, Planet Fitness. So right at the corner of Planet Fitness, down the street from me, a young woman who didn't even graduate high school yet was killed on Valentine's Day.
Damn.
Yeah, she was passenger seat in the car, and apparently I don't know all the details, and I really don't want to come to any conclusions, so I'm not. But yeah, two cars crashed, and they found her with a bullet, with a gunshot wound, and she passed away. And yeah, it's just crazy, especially being on Valentine's Day. Like gun violence should not be tolerated at all, but like, damn, for a young Black woman to die on Valentine's Day, it's crazy. And this is just one of the many incidents that have been occurring, especially with young adults, 25 and under. I think it's in double digits already with just 25 and under dying this year from gun violence, and it's been crazy, man. It's crazy, and as I said, it's a wave. It's everywhere right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard times for specifically for Black people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's expected. I mean, like for years, the research has been out there and available that like as you increase the level of poverty and decrease the access to resources, what we typically deem criminal activity in all of its forms increases. So if anything, for the people who somehow still didn't understand that, this is the clearest indicator that what happened to increase economic strife and instability and struggle and hard time? The pandemic, where millions of people are unemployed and we aren't getting adequate government assistance to assist people like other countries are, like other wealthy countries are. So I think this is literally a prime example of that. And I mean, to me, I'm definitely like, I'm not from DC, but in terms of them listing it as a public health crisis, I think it can go like two ways, because I think the good side is like, okay, if you listen as a public health crisis, then like your solution will be a public health solution, not a policing solution, not a like, oh, how can we increase law enforcement and give them more technology to do predictive, like none of that extra stuff. It's like, okay, like what are, social systems that we can implement to decrease the likelihood and frequency with which gun violence occurs? And then if they are approaching it like that, then they're less likely to reinforce negative and oftentimes racist and ineffectual solutions and means to dealing with gun violence. So my hope is that that is what that will mean.
Yeah.
My what's it called? My only reservation is that you could have just skipped the making gun violence a public health issue and said, well, gun violence is indicative of these other issues, like the level of poverty in the city, like the level of unemployment in the city, like the lack of resources, like you could have just skipped the calling it gun violence and said the specific things. So that's the only thing that makes me worried, is that they might look at that separately and be like, well, what can we do to stop guns specifically? And if they think of like that, they're gonna miss everything else.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't gotten too deep. 1 second.
Go ahead.
Just 1 second. So I haven't looked too deep into it, but like apparently they have done like a study, and they're saying that, you know, gun violence in 52 specific neighborhoods is just off the charts right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so that's where they're focusing their efforts. I don't know. As you had a great point. Hopefully this does not mean, I would hope that this doesn't, this won't lead to more policing in those communities. Because in past, especially during the summertime, they have these like summer initiatives to be more, to have more policing in specific communities.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, I'm like, I bet you if we did a study, we would find that those areas have the highest level and highest concentrations of poverty.
Yeah.
So
like,
what I'll say, I still stand by my earlier statement regarding like, why would you declare this public health crisis versus declaring, you know, other things public health crisis? The reason I stand by my claim is because I don't believe that she declared it a public health crisis in order for her to use the powers associated with declaring something a public health crisis. I believe she declared it that way for optics and nothing more. And the reason I believe that is because her actions have shown that. Let's be real, man. Her actions, Mayor Muriel Bowser, and just so you know, me and KDot, TJakks World and KDot are both from DC. We know what Muriel Bowser has done, right? A lot of people like the development she's had, you know, all the new shining buildings that were built and all the new contracts that were given to all these new investors to come in and build big buildings that are supposed to have housing for people who can afford to, who in those neighborhoods where they tore down those buildings to live in them, although they don't have the housing to be able to afford, or don't have the money to be able to afford the housing in those buildings, and they actually lie about the number of spaces that are in those buildings. That's a whole separate issue. But this Muriel Bowser is performative. She's performative in everything. When she made the Black Lives Matter Plaza, who gives a flying fuck if a street has BLM painted on it? I don't care. Not at all. What are you going to do to address racial inequities in DC? Not a damn thing. And this is you hear me? All right. And this has been the exact same issue that has been going on for years. We know why gun violence is occurring. We know why it's being committed. Right. We know the stressors that make people commit more violence. We know these things. And her solutions, not any past mayor solution, her solution is to partner with the FBI to get guns off the street. Now, here's the thing. I'm not calling Muriel Bowser dumb, but a smart solution to get guns off of the street without putting more police officers on the street is to offer money for the guns with no criminal repercussions, no matter where the gun traces back to.
Right.
If you are a DC citizen, you come in, you would give them the gun, they take down your information, and they give you money for the gun. And not just $20 or $80, give them $1,000. Give them $2,000. Have this be a stimulus that you know is going to directly affect the people who need it the most, right? You could easily do a gun buyback program and get rid of more guns than you've gotten rid of currently with your plan of putting more police and federal officers on the street to locate guns. It's the stupidest plan I've ever fucking heard. Oh, people have a lot of guns.
Yeah.
Let's put more police out there so they can get the guns. How? That's not going to do anything. Yeah. It's that her acts are performative. They are performative. And this declaring the public health crisis, it is not so she can use the powers of mayor in relation to things that are public health crisis. It is just performative because she sees that the gun violence is going up and she wants to, quote unquote, do something about it. This is her doing something about it. And when she runs for her next term, she'll say, I did something about gun violence. I declared it a public health crisis. That's what she's going to say she did. And she's not going to do anything beyond that. What is she going to do? Is she going to increase the funding for schools, public schools in D.C.? No, she's going to increase the funding for maybe charter schools in D.C. Or private schools. She's not going to, or give private schools funding they don't need, or tax breaks they don't need. She's not going to increase funding for public schools. She's not going to increase funding for psychiatric services for people who can't afford them. She's not going to increase funding for financial services for people who can't afford them. She's not going to increase the amount of. She's not going to do away with the legislation that says if you smoke weed, right, you lose your job, right? You can be fired in D.C. for smoking weed, but you can't be fired in D.C. if you drink, if you're an alcoholic. That doesn't get you fired, even though it's statistically more dangerous to be an alcoholic than to be addicted to weed. That don't get you fired, though, right? Unless you come into work drunk. But if you don't come into work high, but you smoke on your off time, that gets you fired, right? So the people who got fired because they smoke weed on their off time, who may be now committing crimes in order to make money, you're not going to do anything about them. But you're going to sit here and act like you're going to do something about gun violence when you don't give a flying fuck about gun violence at all, because you haven't done anything about it. How long have you been mayor? How many terms have you had? When the gun violence goes down, you attribute it to yourself. And when it goes up, you attribute it to other things. You're still mayor when it's going down and when it's going up. It's both of them are your fault. If you're going to take responsibility, if that's how you're going to talk about it, when it's going down, it's your fault, and when it's going up, it's your fault. So figure out why it's going up. We don't even need to figure it out. We know why it's going up. People ain't got shit east of the river. You put all your development on the other side, and a little bit of development you put over here is to push people out. You didn't make deals with the people who put their buildings over here to say, once you finish this building, you must hire 60 to 70% of the people from this area to work in your buildings. And if you do put those things in, you don't enforce them. Because I know she did do it for one of the people who built a building over at the at St. Elizabeth's. I don't know which company it was specifically, but she doesn't enforce it, right? What happens if the company doesn't employ 70% of people from this area? What happens if the company employs people not from this area and then they move to this area? So now it counts. Right? Those are the things she's engaged in. That's what she's talking about. She don't give a fuck about no goddamn gun violence. And so I hate the conversation of Mary Bowers taking a stance on gun violence by declaring it a public health emergency. Get out of here. She does not care about the gun violence because if she did, there are 1,000,004 solutions to the gun violence that's occurring in D.C. Not one of them involves declaring it a public health crisis. Not one of them involves putting more police officers on the street. And not one of them involves performative actions that only seek to help you with your reelection. You want to do something about gun violence?
Yeah.
Give people food. Stop cutting food stamps if you want to do something about gun violence. Stop cutting Social Security if you want to do something about gun violence. Make it so that people don't have $10,000, $5,000, $3,000, $1,000 worth of back rent because they can't afford to pay their rent right now. Stop letting people get evicted because they're too poor. People who get evicted from their house for not paying their rent should be the people who choose not to pay the rent, not the people who physically can't pay it. We need to do something for those people. We need to take care of those people. And she don't care about taking care of people. Yeah. She cares about taking care of herself.
Her resume. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, bro.
I need another drink.
Yeah, you nailed it on that, bro. especially with housing, man. Like, I don't think the fact that we've normalized paying so much for housing is crazy. like especially when this is a necessity. You know what I'm saying? We could go off onto well, I just want to mention briefly, and this is kind of a tangent, but we're talking about housing. So there's a woman. I don't know her personally, but many people do, especially east of the river. I bet she's known for many things, but unfortunately, I only knew her as the woman that lived underneath 295 overpass on Pennsylvania Avenue, and apparently she lived there for 10 years. And from this most recent winter storm, she passed away. Yeah, and today, well, I guess yesterday now, but they had like not a vigil, but just like a little get together, like the community did. And I meant to go, but I just it kind of slipped my mind.
You know what they're decreasing in DC? Homeless shelters.
Yeah,
come on, man.
They have some whole type
come on, man.
Right now.
Yeah, and this is not the only homeless person that or displaced person that has passed away from like this year from like all these crazy winter storms. Like it's real out here, man. Hypothermia is real.
That is crazy. I thought Syracuse was on some.
Don't get me wrong. DC does a lot of things right, but they ain't perfect. There's a lot of good that can be done that they're not, on. And like I said, they're decreasing beds for homeless people in DC, not increasing them. They're not building more shelters. They're not building more beds. They're decreasing them. And I don't know if y'all have been. Maybe if y'all work with BSC, y'all did the kitchen one year. But I don't know if y'all have been to the homeless shelters in DC. They ain't all that. It's not like a 5-star hotel. The food ain't that great, and the beds ain't that great, right? So it ain't even like they're putting a lot of money into the existing facilities.
Yeah. Yep. And in DC, 88% of displaced or homeless people are Black. So I saw a tweet today. It's like,
that's crazy.
I saw a tweet today. It's like basically don't ignore this. Don't ignore that this is a racial issue, and I think a lot of it stems from criminal justice system, or the prison system, and just how hard it is to re-enter society when you're essentially blackballed from housing, employment, benefits.
Especially so much. Usually place like DC.
Yeah. Exactly. When they have the discretion, and I was gonna mention this as well with when we were talking about housing, like affordable housing, just like how they when they say mixed affordable housing or mixed income housing, they dedicate like 20 units out of like 500 units to people that don't meet the income or like below the poverty level.
For my job, when they create our salaries, they adjust it based on where you live. And DC has the highest adjustment. I think DC and New York for my job have the highest adjustments in LA, which is adding 30% onto your salary, so you can afford to live there.
Damn.
Come on, man. Come on.
It's tough out here. Bro. Like, especially like us three, but we are blessed, bro.
Facts. Big facts. I'll never not acknowledge that.
Just blessed to do everything that like in our daily lives that us as humans that we think are rights, housing, having food. Crazy out here.
I be thinking about that all the time. Like even like there was like that, that 20-year-old activist in Myanmar. I think I said it right. Who got shot in the head. Because she was like protesting the coup because the military took over the government over there. I'm like, dang, like I mean, we be dealing with stuff over here too. Like I ain't even gonna act like America don't get crazy. I mean, they already officers literally joking a couple months ago how they was like riding over protesters' heads with a bike after they made them like have to be on the ground, like all types of crazy stuff. But I'm just like, dang, like, and definitely be like, organizing here is crazy, but like definitely other places is like it's just this stuff people have to even advocate for is just ridiculous in the way they just.
But look, don't let that dilute what you do here, because there are people in other countries that look at us and go, the stuff that they have to do, the things that they have to fight for, are things we could never imagine fighting for. Right? It's people in other countries that can never imagine fighting their government in order to provide health care. Right? That's something that's specific to us in developed nations.
That's
well, both sides. Some people are so oppressed they don't have a voice.
I agree. But what I'm saying is, because I see a lot of people using that argument that it's worse in other places. So, what are we really protesting about? But, I just want to, let it be known. Because it's worse in other places doesn't mean you shouldn't make things better for you.
We should be
that means you should care about those issues and your issues. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I don't know why people think we can't, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Care about their issues and care about your issues. You don't have to go, well, this is worse than what I'm going through, so I shouldn't do anything about my current position. No. Do something about both.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah,
we need to be good.
Facts. What was I going to say? Shit, I don't even remember.
My bad, bro.
But yeah. No, I definitely agree with that.
This nigga. But that's, bro, I think a great example of, and we've been talking about this a lot, especially today, but a great example of where America comes short versus every country. That damn prison system, bro.
Yeah, that and
everything else, like shit.
Literally, like, the only like wealthy country that came close to like the number of civilian deaths by police was Canada.
Do you know their second?
Ours was
go ahead.
Hold on. Let me go. Ours was like, so our count, I think this was from 2018 they recorded it. Ours was like 1,000 something.
Yeah.
Canada was 32.
They're number 2.
32. Same for the same, and they're literally number 2. And even if you adjust for population, I forgot ours is still like 10 times per capita.
Brother,
I think when I did the math, something like that. And I'm just like, bruh, there is no way.
Now look,
I'm like, this is why
I'm glad we started
abolishing
this
the police.
So now, I'm glad we started this podcast so I can get this information out there, because I'm going to come back. I'm going to do America exit to Canada. So y'all already know at some point I'm going to move to Canada. Now, I don't just want to move to Canada because they have free healthcare. That's not the only reason. It's a lot of countries. There's a lot of countries that have free healthcare. So why would I choose Canada? Well, let me explain to you.
Because
actually, I do like winter. That's my favorite season.
Oh yeah,
but
big fact.
Go ahead with that. TJakks is off the podcast, y'all.
All right, look, but listen. So the reason I want to move to Canada is because I have a higher chance of living as a black man in Canada. Let me explain this. In America, after heart disease and cancer, the number one cause of death for black men is homicide. Okay? The number one killer in that category are police officers. Okay?
Damn.
In Canada, homicide for black men is leading cause of death 22, 23. It's in the 20s. And everything else above it are natural causes. So different diseases that are natural causes above
heart disease,
above homicide, right? So almost anything else will kill you in Canada as a black man, but homicide. And even the homicide numbers, as you were told, 32 by a police officer, and guns aren't permitted in to be like it's not an open carry anything situation over there. You can have a gun, but you got to go through a lot of shit to get it. And if you use it, you better have a real good reason for using it, or your ass going away for a long time in Canada, and you're gonna get a fine. So it's less likely as a black man that you will die or be murdered rather in Canada than in the United States. That's why I want to move to Canada, because I will not be murdered in Canada, most likely. Whereas most likely, if I die in America, I'll be murdered. What the fuck?
Yeah, makes sense.
And black women have a 35% chance of being killed, or I'm sorry, black women have a 35% chance of dying by homicide.
Yeah.
35% chance of dying by homicide by virtue of being a black woman. It gets lower as you get like past 40, but yeah.
We gotta get up out of here. We gotta get up out of here, and we gotta hold it
Oh
down
yeah, I'm
for
coming
the
back
next
and helping
week.
everybody get passports. Cause look, I'll say no, but I'm serious. There's a dual mission here, right? There's the mission of liberation for the people here, and liberation in terms of people who don't want to be here.
Right.
I see my role in our mission as getting as many people who don't want to be here out. And I think that's a good part of the mission for black people. There are going to be some people who want to stay here, who want to fight, and I commend those people, and I'll help those people, and I'll assist those people in whatever ways I can. But there are going to be people like me who want to leave and who don't want to come back unless something substantial has changed for our people. There are going to be people who don't want to be here and who don't have the means to leave yet. And that's where I see my role, coming back and helping as many people as I can to get not necessarily to Canada, but to whatever country they want to be in whatever situation they want to be in. So people might want to go, Bermuda, or I don't know, what's a sunny country? I don't know. I only look at the winter countries. Oh, Japan's pretty sunny. Nah, actually, no. Japan's really rainy. I'm sorry.
So what you gonna call this movement, brother? So what you gonna call this movement,
Black
my
Exodus.
brother?
Nah, somebody already used that. They're using that for leaving the Democratic Party, so I can't use that anymore. We're gonna call it the Black Migration.
Yeah, I think that's something that's fitting.
That's already happened.
Well, it's
in
the
America.
second Black Migration.
This has to be the third wave. The third wave.
Stop hating.
The third wave.
What you mean? Oh yeah, actually, yeah.
Third wave Black Migration. Bang. So wherever, look, if you say that you want to live, because I know some people who have already left, who live in like Costa Rica or Brazil. If you say that those are the countries you want to be in, all right. I'm not going to question what country you want to go to. I'm going to just help you get there.
Brazil.
I mean,
no.
Brazil.
I mean, I wouldn't choose Brazil either. But like, if that's what you
That's
want,
the highest. That's the largest.
I wouldn't choose Brazil personally. But if that's what you want, that's what you want.
Yeah, I mean,
black people. Why can't we just all be? We're talking about unity. Why can't we all just go to the same place?
Everybody ain't gonna want to go to Canada, bro.
I don't think that's.
Everybody ain't gonna want to go to Canada. It's all right. So people gonna want to go to warm places. Look, Costa Rica is really nice, from what I've heard. So probably a lot of people, or maybe some people might want to immigrate to. Well, if as long as you're not LGBTQ, you could probably immigrate to Jamaica, or Haiti.
Yeah,
but there's gonna be people who want to go all over the place. People gonna want to be cold. People gonna want to be warm. People gonna want to be, where it's a lot of shade. So it's not up. I'm not trying to put black people in one country because there ain't no purpose in doing that, right? I'm just trying to put black people in situations that are favorable to them and where they want to be. That's it.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of the Black House Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in for the next one. Until then, we bid you adieu.